What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the history of Trick Room in DOU. I guess kind of doubles in general, but we're mostly going to be talking about DOU here. And yeah, so this was something I wanted to record a while back, ever since I recorded like the history of Rain video. But I just kind of never got around to it, and someone mentioned it in the comments last week, so here we are doing it today. And so yeah, we'll just be going over like the way like the use of Trick Room has changed like over time, over the course of the generations, how these Trick Room teams are used, how well Trick Room teams and like the use of the move Trick Room in general has changed like and how it's like used in every single generation. It's more so about how like in the modern understanding of these tiers, like how Trick Room is used, rather than like how it's like way it's been changed like over time. But we're indirectly talking about over time because we're talking about over the course of the generations, whatever. So yeah, Trick Room doesn't exist in Gen 3 because Gen 3 is Pokemon for toddlers, as I like to say. I like to say that about every tier I dislike, but yeah, I mean, Gen 3 doesn't have like a whole lot of the same level of like depth that starts existing in Gen 4 when you get like the physical special split and moves like Trick Room, right? So Trick Room, you know, reverses the speed of the battle. The actual mechanics of how it does that is pretty funny. It leaves you with Pokemon that can outspeed in Trick Room, but that's not really relevant today. But you know, it is like kind of a bit of a more complex move, and so it kind of makes sense that it was only added in Gen 4 when you think about it. And yeah, so the Pokemon that exist in Gen 4 are really not like on the same power level as you'll see in like later gens. So that kind of produces some interesting dynamics, right? As for Pokemon that like actually use Trick Room, in Gen 4, along with Gen 4, we're releasing Trick Room. It also released like maybe one of the strongest overall Trick Room setters ever, being Cresselia. So Cresselia in this tier just has like a lot of stats. Like you look at this, and it's just like kind of a lot. Um, but the thing is, Cresselia doesn't like actually like doesn't really output a whole lot of pressure, so it mainly has to support its team in like other ways. And has thankfully it has like a lot of utility moves. But sometimes it won't even like carry Trick Room. It'll just run like Icy Wind stuff. It's very very flexible Pokemon, and yeah, I mean it's very good at just getting Trick Room up. However, like it does in the context of Gen 4, there's a few things like it basically can't touch ever, which kind of makes it feel a little bit sad, like Metagross or Tyranitar or whatever. And so those kind of become main Pokemon that you want to be able to like defeat with your other Trick Room options, right? So the Pokemon that are actually taking advantage of the Trick Room, uh, one of the big, most prominent ones is Rhyperior. Uh, very, very like you never really see this Pokemon in later gens, but it actually doesn't really have bad stats, especially for like a Gen 4 context. So you'll see stuff like Swords Dance, Rock Slide, Earthquake. Uh, that's kind of your standard Trick Room Super. You can also see stuff like Heatran. I believe Heatran does have Eruption in this gen, yeah. But because Tyranitar is so common, I feel like Eruption Heatran is actually like not that strong compared to other gens, but it's definitely something that like exists. And you'll see this for a lot of the gens. Like Eruption Heatran is very strong in theory, but like actually setting it up can be a little bit more like tricky than it sounds. But Cresselia Heatran is a duo we'll be talking about for like the majority of this video. This is like a very kind of common pairing, especially because Eruption Heatran is locked into minus speed until Gen 8 when Nature Bits were added. So yeah, Quiet Nature Heatran. This is something we'll see over the course of this video. This is another common Trick Room sweeper. There's also some more out there Pokemon that can take advantage of Trick Room. I mean, Metagross is not bad at doing it as well. Like a lot of the Mons in DPP, there's some that are slow that can take advantage of it naturally. But the main like actual like Trick Room sweeper that you'll see is Rhyperior. And I gathered a couple replays here. The other like main things to talk about. There's Clamperl is a funny Pokemon in this gen because well, it has a item that doubles a special attack. It has Muddy Water, and so it can actually hit pretty hard. But that has to be used like specifically in context with like Rain Dance stuff. But sometimes get used with like what's it called, Dusclops or Dusknoir to set the rain. I believe Dusclops is slower than Clamperl, so that's why you use Dusclops even though Eviolite isn't in the game. I mean, that bulk is very similar, anyways. Uh, You'll also see Bronzong setting Trick Room a lot, just because, I mean, we'll see this guy sometimes. It's not used in every gen, but it just has a great bulk, great typing with Levitator, Heat Proof. These are both incredible abilities. Uh, So yeah, and this is like this. I believe is a Clamperl team. I just selected a whole bunch of replays from like the variety of the generations that have occurred this year. So it's all like pretty recent stuff. Dude, come on, it's so boring, man. Why don't the games go faster? But yeah, I mean, like, very common trick room setter here. You can see it has Rain Dance, right? So that is often used in combination with Clamperl. You can see the Rhyperior here, although it did die to this weekend. And this is a Pokemon that can often farm Trick Room in these gens. Like, it just, like, in the early gen, Suicune is, like, a very, very bulky Pokemon. It's not, like, the most powerful, but it can easily set up combines to be, like, very annoying for Trick Room teams. This is also a kind of a thing in Gen 5. Suicune in Gen 5 has actually seen, like, a fair amount of play this DPL. But yeah, especially in Gen 4, I think this is one of the main ones that like Trick Room teams can struggle to deal with, especially these kind of ones, because like look at what they have. They don't really have like the. I was with Blizzard, man. What is? I'm closing this replay. I don't think the Trick Room team won in this game anyway. All right, here's another Gen 4 replay. This time with Cresselia. So this is I think, an interesting replay. It seemed like all the different things that like Crest can click. Very, very bulky Pokemon. Toxic is like an excellent tool that it makes use of in this gen, albeit 85% accurate, but it enables it to make like progress and do a lot of things it normally wouldn't be able to do. And you can see like there's the Heatran that I was talking about. I don't know if this is Eruption Heatran. Uh, I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you can see like Metagross is also something that can take advantage of the Trick Room. I mean, there's so many Pokemon that kind of exist in this middling speed tier. And you'll notice, like in these older gens, like Pokemon were as min-max, so there often were Pokemon that were quite as slow as the ones we have today that are like very, very good. And that's just kind of natural as you get more Pokemon in the game, right? But it leads to some of these Pokemon that are maybe not conventionally fought as Pokemons today. Like, uh, they were actually, like, fairly slow for their time, so they could actually be a little bit more, like, stronger beneficiaries of Trick Room. And so this is kind of a textbook Gen 4 team. Like, it's very balanced. There's a lot of Pokemon with lots of stats, multiple ways to play the game. Like, the Crest has both Trick Room and Icy Wind. Uh, and that just, makes it a very, very, very flexible Pokemon. So you don't really see like a whole lot of like the hard Trick Room stuff. The hard Trick Room stuff is the ones that use Rhyperior and like Clamperl, and the other Pokemon that you wouldn't normally think of as like good solid doubles Pokemon. But in Gen 4, like there's so many of these like very, very balanced like kind of style teams that just they have Trick Room on the team. They have Crest because Crest is just a good Pokemon. Let's see what happened in this game. Suicune went crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's a good example. Like, the Turner wasn't, like, super important to the team, but, like, this is, like, a very, very real case. And I mean, like, Trick Room used on a lot more kinds of teams in general than just, like, hard Trick Room, right? And so this is kind of a good example of what that looks like in Gen 4. I think that's most of the Mons with it in Gen 4. This is another, like, hard Trick Room team with Bronzong this time. And that's kind of the nice thing about Crest is Bronzong. Like you can like put like an Earthquake mod next to it, and that like pairs very, very well because it deals with Heatran, Metagross, like the Gen 4 staples of like just good Pokemon that you want to be able to deal with all your teams. But yeah, I think that's mostly it for the mods that like use and abuse Trick Room in Gen 4. Like I said, I mean there's like a lot of options just because speed tiers are not as mid max, so you can see a lot of different things. So moving to Gen 5, there's a few things that were added. And it's interesting, right? So, on the one hand, okay, Cresselia is still a thing. Bronzong kind of drops off a cliff. I mean, like, you could maybe use it, but you don't really see it a whole lot. It's just not as good. There's other ones you can use that we're about to talk about. And so the first of these is Jellicent. So Jellicent, uh, this is like kind of like the predominant, like when you think of Trick Room in Gen 5, what you should be thinking of is like Jellicent, Conkeldurr. Like these are just good Pokemon. Uh, and this is like you'll see this combination a lot, uh, like here and well, this is Cresselia instead of Jellicent, but Conkeldurr. Basically what it does in this gen specifically is it runs Life Orb Iron Fist with Hammer Arm, and it just does like a billion damage. Ice Punch as well, and yeah, there's stuff like this. You'll see this kind of structure a lot. Conkeldurr, Jellicent. Jellicent very good at like dealing with like rain, which is a lot like very prominent in this gen, and it's just very bulky. You really don't see it like a whole lot in later gens. But it's specifically in Gen 5, it has a lot of useful characteristics like Water Absorb, it's being generally bulky. Wisp isn't bad. Like this is not like a terrible Pokemon in later gens. You just wouldn't really use it as much. Uh, it just has very good synergy with like the other Trick Room mons that are good. And there's less things that like kind of like hard beat it. Whereas, in later gens you're looking at like like Tapu Koko or something, and the typing is like maybe less good later on. But in Gen 5, completely fine. So we'll see a lot of this Jealous of Blissum Kelder stuff. You can also see Eruption Heatran sometimes. Not like the most common, but it's definitely something you can use. Cresselia, like just like in this game. Again, still very, very bulky in this gen. It still has excellent utility. You can see it a fair amount. And you'll see, yeah, I mean, this is like a very common structure, like Gastrodon and Cresselia, Conkeldurr. I mean, Gastrodon's not as common as like the other two, but like you'll see it. Like I've seen this kind of team like a fair number of times over the years. It's pretty similar to like the DPP team we were just talking about, where it's like this is not like a hard Trick Room team, but it does have like an attacker that can be used in Trick Room, and then it has some faster pieces, but it's not like fully committed to it. Uh, it's like hard Trick Room teams. Those become more common later on when you have better ways to like ensure that you'll get Trick Room up every game. Whereas like in Gen 5, like that just seems like a bad idea with like Taunt Bund running around and stuff like that, right? So it's less easy to like guarantee you'll get Trick Room up every game and be able to use that as like your only strategy. So you see a lot more of these like kind of like mixed like strategies where you'll have like kind of a fast mode and just like a lot of mons that like have middling speed tiers. Like Metagross here, like I'm not sure what the Cresselia set on this team is, but it might be like again like we saw like Icy Wind and Trick Room, so it can like be like helpful in multiple ways for the mons on this team. Here we can actually see it with Trick Choice Scarf. But it might also be Trick Room. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just not. Maybe I misread Trick as Trick Room. But regardless, it very easily could be Trick Room on this team, and you wouldn't bat an eye. That's my bad. But I mean, yeah, Chris is again. It has a lot of tools that it can use. Let's see. The other one that was added in this gen is Porygon 2. And so P2 is actually, like they did add a Violite this gen, but you won't really see this Pokemon a lot. Uh, it's not the worst, but like it just kind of like the other Trick Room setters are kind of better at this point in time. And Conkeldurr being like very good is not good for P2. Uh, like fighting types in general kind of got worse over time, I'd say, and so that's like why you see less of these guys in later gens and more of this guy in later gens. Because P2 actually has probably like the best bulk of all of these guys, but by typing, it's not actually like as good as the others. And it has like decent recovery. I mean, so does Jellicent, but Bolt Beam coverage with download, still not bad. And you'll see this guy once in a while in PW, but it's really not that common. Like it's definitely not unviable, but we'll see this more when we talk about Gen 7 and Gen 8. A little bit in Gen 6, but some Gelder problem still exists in Gen 6. So like it's starting in Gen 7, the fighting type just becomes like a lot worse. Uh, with like the fairy type being a thing, and like actual fairy types being in the game. In Gen 6, like fairy type exists, and the fighting type definitely drops off a little bit. But it's really Gen 7 where a lot of those fighting types are added, and they become like more of a liability to have like a fighting type on your team. But yeah, so Conkeldurr, there's that Life Orb set, Mach Punch, Drain Punch, Ice Punch, presumably Detect or Protect last. Just does a lot of damage. This is the main Trick Room sleeper you'll see in this gen. It's not even like really a sweeper, but it's just a great piece. It just does a lot of damage to basically everything. Fighting ice coverage is very good in VW. Let's see, is there anything else? Ferrothorn as well, like Cursed Ferrothorn could be used. Back when Gothitelle was legal, that was used a lot with Trick Room. But Shadow Tag now banned, so uh, that's something you'll see again. Like Gothitelle is another one that gets added. It's banned in Gen 8 and Gen 9, but in Gen 6 and Gen 7, and formerly in BW until last year, it was another like just Trick Room setter with like a lot of flexibility. And obviously, like it's more of a Shadow Tag Pokemon than a Trick Room Pokemon, but it does make excellent use of Trick Room, and that's a lot of the mons you'll pair with it. Oh, and also Amoonguss is a big deal. So this is a very big deal because Amoonguss actually becomes like a critical piece that Trick Room teams have to be scared of in like all future gens. Because Amoonguss is very, very slow naturally and can be used with like, and it doesn't really care about its speed, right? So you can use Amoonguss with like all sorts of teams that are not Trick Room related, and it gives you more of a Trick Room matchup. In BW, it's not as big a deal because there's Sleep Claws, but in Gen 6, we'll start to see mons running safety goggles and stuff because you got to deal with Amoonguss. That's kind of one of the main factors, like keeping Trick Room in check in Gen 6. Um, but yeah, let's see. Yeah, Heat Train I already talked about. Definitely still okay. Um, I think that's mostly it. I mean, Trick Room is not like, again, in Gens 4 and 5, it's not really like as dominant like a strategy when you would just want to commit to Trick Room. That's not really something you really see as much because like it's just kind of inflexible into like the top ones. So you'll see a lot of teams with like a couple of trick room pieces, but you'll very rarely see like full trick room teams. Here's another one in Gen 5. Last thing we'll talk about for Gen 5. But yeah, there's the Jellicent combo. You can see Amoonguss as well. So, again, like you can definitely have like plenty of trick room teams with Amoonguss too, but Amoonguss good on both trick room and non trick room teams. Yeah, the Jellicent comes in, sets trick room. Toxic's another thing. It often runs like Toxic or Wisp. Both statuses are very good in this gen. Wisp, like while inaccurate, does do like 12% damage every turn, which is kind of a lot. Um, and obviously, having physical damage is always good. And sometimes you'll see this guy running Water Spout, but it really doesn't do a whole lot of damage. I think Scald is generally a little bit more consistent because you can fish for like burn chip, um, and then often recover less. Sometimes I've seen Nightshade before, I think, but that's not really the most common. It's usually water move. But not being able to hit itself is kind of bad. So yeah, I think usually that's nice. That's why Toxic is nice because you can at least make progress into opposing Jellicent. Yeah, here you can see the Metagross just made a like insane amount of progress under Trick Room. Paired with Amoonguss. That's what ends up winning in the game. Okay, moving on to Gen 6. So in Gen 6, like the way Conkeldurr is used changes because it kind of needs like the Assault Vest is added. That's just a great item for Conkeldurr. It can still be used on Trick Room, but Trick Room in general is not that strong in this gen. That's for a couple of reasons. Number one, Amoonguss, no more Sleep Claws. It can put as many things to sleep as it wants. That does come at the cost of like safety goggles being added, which a lot of Trick Room teams will always run because you need to be immune to Spore and have a way to have counterplay to that. But like you know, let's see what else. P2 is like probably a slightly more real mod in this tier, but you won't see a whole lot of it. And the big one that was added is Diancie. So Diancie, not as big a deal in this gen specifically because, like I said, Trick Room is kind of a little bit weaker than you'll see in like Gen 7 and Gen 8 and Gen 9. But like it is a very, very key player that was introduced in this gen with Diamond Storm, Trick Room. This is one of the best mods at setting Trick Room and actually making its own progress once it sets Trick Room. That's a trait that's very, very uncommon. Um, but in these gens, before it has body press, it's like a little bit more like limited to running like weakness policy and stuff like that. So it's not quite as dangerous as Pokemon as it becomes in Gen 8 and Gen 9. But it's still a very excellent Trick Room Sweeper. Diamond Storm is a great move. Like boosting your defense while attacking is kind of crazy. And then, it's a fairy type, which is obviously one of the best types in the game. And the nice thing about Diancie that we'll see come into play, especially in later gens, it's like it has a different typing profile than a lot of different Trick Room mods, being Rock Fairy type. Because a lot of Trick Room mods are like, Ghost, Psychic type, stuff like that. Rock Fairy is like, it's definitely distinct from that. Better into like the Dark type stuff. That would there's a lot of good Dark type mobs that are added like later gens. Here it's not as big a deal, but like having that slightly different typing for setting Trick Room is really really nice to ensure that you'll have like always a way to set Trick Room depending like on what your opponent has. Let's see. Heatran again, still a viable Pokemon. You can still kind of use Jellicent, but it's definitely like even by now it's like fallen off a fair amount in Gen 6. And then Volcanion is another mod that's like it's a very good mod in the gen in general, but it doesn't mind Trick Room being up. It's not that fast. Let's see. Oh, and also the Megas. So the Megas like most commonly associated with Trick Room are probably like Gardevoir because it can actually set Trick Room. In this gen, Gardevoir tends to like more commonly run, at least at this point in the tier's history, tends to run Combine instead of Trick Room. But it can still collect Trick Room. That was kind of something it did in VGC. But here it's mostly Combined. The other one that like is added that is most commonly associated with like hard Trick Room in general is Mega Camerupt. So this is kind of like the hard Trick Room Mega. It's less relevant in this gen than it is in Gen 7. In Gen 7, it gets better for reasons we'll talk about in a bit. But this Pokemon's not completely unviable. Like, in terms of like hard Trick Room megas, this is like the mega for Trick Room. It just does a lot of damage with Sheer Force, like Heat Wave, Earth Power, stuff like that. It's really not that bad. Unfortunately, the dominant fire type being Volcanion is kind of bad for Camerupt because it runs like really Spadef Assault Vest a lot of the time, and I don't think you actually kill with Earth Power, which is pretty sad. I mean, you do like a lot of damage to it, which is nice, but like it is slightly annoying. Let's see, anything else that I forgot? Metagross becomes like a lot less relevant as a Pokemon. So like in Gen 4 and Gen 5, we saw a lot of fun Metagross on those teams with Trick Room, and you'll see a lot less of that from here on out. Just kind of because like there's more good mods in the game, and like it doesn't really get as much mileage by itself. Let's see, is there anything down here? Like Gen 6 is when you start to have like a lot more variety, I think, in terms of like Pokemon in the game. There's just a lot more Pokemon in the game, a lot more items, the megas. Like there's a lot of changes. So I'm just making sure I didn't really forget anything. But I mean, it's still most of the same like key pieces. Crest is still the best Trick Room setter at this point. That won't really change until next gen. When we're talking about like P2 becoming really good, DNC becoming really good, and then, you know, this mod just kind of not being as good. So like kind of like one of the main reasons I think that a lot of Trick Room teams are like a little annoying to like actually run in this gen is Mega Kang. So Mega Kangaskhan is a very, very powerful Pokemon. And obviously you probably know about Chalk. You know, Cresselia, like Heatran, Amogus, Landorus, Kangaskhan, which was a like very dominant in BGC. Like Chalk itself is not that common, mostly because Volcanion completely changes the fire type landscape, so you see a lot less of like actual Heatran. But Cresselia Kangaskhan is very good because Kangaskhan pairs very, very well with any psychic type. So like this is like a common thing you'll see: Cresselia, Kangaskhan, Amogus, Volcanion. You'll see that a fair amount. But the most annoying thing about Kangaskhan in this gen is that it runs Seismic Toss, which does 200 damage to everything. And like something to be noted is like Porygon 2 and Diancie are very bulky Pokemon. However, the thing that they don't have is high HP. Basically, anything less than 100 base HP is going to be 2 KO'd by Seismic Toss, which is like really, really annoying for Porygon 2 and Diancie, which want to live a long time because they have great bulk. But their bulk doesn't come from their HP, so they're very susceptible to Kangaskhan. Whereas Cresselia has like a lot of HP, so it really doesn't matter as much. It's not getting 2 KO'd by Seismic Toss, which is like, you know, I don't want to overstate it, but like that's still like a really big deal to be able to like live 2 hits of that. Like, so it makes Cresselia like much better than these other two by extension because this set is very, very strong and very common. But yeah, I mean, the other thing that's kind of annoying, going to Gen 6 from like Gen 5 is there's really not as good fake out Pokemon in general in Gen 6. Like Scrafty and like Hitmontop are both very good. And even Mew you'll see sometimes in Gen 5. And Gen 6 is basically Kangaskhan. So if you want to run non-Kangaskhan teams, it becomes a lot more of a commitment to like run a fake out Pokemon to support your Trick Room team. Because fake out's really nice in general to have to like guarantee you can get Trick Room up. But that's not really a luxury you have as much in Gen 6 if you're not running Kangaskhan. So you'll see a lot of like these kind of hybrid teams with like Kangaskhan, and then the Crest can have Trick Room, just like in previous gens. So here's a recent replay that I played, this DPL, which is it's basically like Chalk, but it has Rotom instead of Thundurus. Which is, I mean, Thundurus was always kind of like the flexible slot in VGC, anyways. I think this is a good kind of example of like stuff you can do with Trick Room in Gen 6. You're not. This is definitely not a hard Trick Room team. Like Amogus, Cresselia, Heatran could definitely make like extensive progress in Trick Room like they did in this game, but I still have my fast pieces with like the Kangaskhan. I think I had like the Kangaskhan be like slightly slower than most other Kangaskhan. Yeah, like I mean, I had a fair amount of bulk to even just like live that attack there. Uh, and so I was like a little bit slower, so I could use it in Trick Room and underspeed other Kang. And it's still like a fairly fast one. Outspeeds most things, right? So and here's actually a rare P2 team from Idle. And so this kind of team is mostly just using the P2 to just be a bulky piece. It was probably triggered with like the Volcanion just to be like, you know, make a little bit of progress with that. But overall, it's not like the other teams we talked about. It's definitely not a hard Trick Room team because those are not really common still in Gen 6. So yeah, I got Trick Room up. You get the big eruption heat train in, and unfortunately I forgot to make the Cresselia slower than the heat tread with an Power Fire, so I didn't get the combo off. But yeah, that's something kind of funny you can do with it. You can also run like Helping Hand or Sunny Day on the Crest, all sorts of different things that like try to support like the heat tread. I think it's a very very underappreciated combination, but you still see it a fair amount of the time. So yeah, that's kind of a good example of like what you'll see. You'll see like Kangaskhan pretty good at supporting these Trick Room teams. Just gives it a lot of an extra dimension. And here's kind of another kind of Trick Room team that uses like kind of Charizard. Sometimes it's not actually Trick Room. Sometimes the Cresselia is like Calm Mind instead, which is like very very powerful. But in this case, one of these teams has Calm Mind Cresselia, the other one has like Trick Room Cresselia with like DNC and Heatran. So this is another thing you can do. Um, yeah, and here's it's just a good example of like DNC stuff in this gen. Weakness policy activates, but unfortunately it dies to the toxic. So this is another example of like kind of what Trick Room will look like in Gen 6. Faster mode, but then you have like Cresselia and like some ways to support the Trick Room, and then maybe one other Trick Room attacker. Sometimes DNC. Sometimes you'll see Conkeldurr as well. I didn't really find any like replays with like that, but um, let's see. Okay, moving on. Gen 7. So in Gen 7 is when you get like kind of some more major changes, right? Because you get Incineroar, and Incineroar is like, and Zero Aura as well. These are like two excellent fake out Pokemon that are like very good at like allowing you to get Trick Room up more consistently. So you'll see a lot more. This is like the hard Trick Room team. Uh, And there's a lot of like depth to this team actually because you'll be able to run like Z Trick Room Bronzong, which is maybe one of the like the strongest Trick Room pieces in this gen because it basically gives you an accuracy boost and then you can start spamming Hypnosis. And because you want to run Hypnosis, you need something to turn off Electric and Misty Terrain, so you run Tapu Bulu. The other thing Tapu Bulu does is it gives you access to Z Nature Power, or not Z Nature Power, but Nature Power on Mega Camerupt, which turns into Energy Ball, gets the Grassy Terrain boost, and allows it to hit Tapu Fini. It's also sheer force boosted because it's energy ball. So this is a very, very like this is like the Trick Room team, but it's very, very well constructed. It has a lot of like interacting pieces that I think are really cool. How much this game will show, like, it can be very, very difficult to play into this team because it just has so many options. Like when it keeps Trick Room up, it just does so much damage to you. Even Tapu Bulu itself just does a lot of damage, especially when it has terrain. And so yeah, this is like the other gen where you'll see like a lot of Bronzong. It's Gen 4, Gen 7, and Gen 9 are the ones where Bronzong is very, very good. But yeah, Mega Camerupt is kind of like the defining sleeper of this team. And this is kind of its main gen because this team is just very good and it's the best Mega you could put on this team. To be honest, I think this is kind of like the main thing to cover with Trick Room in this gen because like this is like the hard Trick Room team. You'll still see like plenty of like more balanced teams with like P2, which we'll look at in the team builder in a second. But uh, this is like you take anything away from Gen 7 in this video, this is the Gen 7 Trick Room team. And P2 again, this is the gen where P2 becomes very good because again, like I said earlier, there's like basically no fighting types in Gen 7 because they're all made a lot worse by the Tapus existing, right? So it makes P2 very, very strong and capable of like just setting Trick Room over and over, getting recovers off, just clicking an Ice Beam and like T-Bolt, doing like pretty like those are like pretty decent typings of moves to have in this gen. So it makes like Tapu Bulu, not Tapu Bulu, Porygon 2 like very, very good at just like making a little bit of progress in setting Trick Room and being able to set Trick Room multiple times in the right matchups. Let's look at Gen 7. Oh, also I have like my builder open. So those are some of the stuff I have with Trick Room in Gen 6. There's nothing like super interesting in here, but if we look at Gen 7, I think the most interesting teams are the ones that have P2. So like this one, I used this at DPL. Again, like it doesn't need to be like a full Trick Room team. It can just have like one Trick Room sleeper and one like Crim attacker. And then, P2 just makes decent progress on its own. And another nice thing to have with these like kind of semi-trick room teams is like kind of a faster setup sweeper like Mega Salamence I think is really nice to use with it in Gen 7. I have a few different teams like that use like Mega Salamence as like the faster like win condition. Let's see. I definitely have some other. Oh, yeah, Gothitelle as well. Plenty of like different. I've used this before with Kurgamon Goth, and then like kind of very slow Assault Vest Genesect, very bulky, being able to like pick its targets really well. Stuff like that. Gothitelle is very very flexible. You also see stuff with Sakataka in Gen 7. It'll often, especially on these like Sun teams, you'll see like Sun plus Sakataka. It's pretty strong. You can also run Rock Z to just do like a lot of damage. And then also like there's more stuff you could do with Bronze Like there is the most common one by far is like the other is like the Trick Room team with Tapu Bulu and stuff and like Mega Camrupt. But I also was experimenting with this stuff with like Metal Sound, Bronzong, also getting the accuracy boost from like the Z move and then pairing it with Hyper Voice Mega Gardevoir, just doing a lot of damage. So Bronzong definitely like a very, very real Mega in this gen. And you'll see Gardevoir sometimes as well. It's not like super, super common because there's plenty of other fairy types to use, but you won't really see Calm Mind Mega Gardevoir like you do in Gen 6. So a lot of the time, if you see it, it will be Trick Room. And it's it has good stats. It does a lot of damage. Hyper Voice hits hard. And yeah, Zero Aura another like excellent addition for Trick Room because like Fake Out is just like the best way to get guaranteed Trick Room. Being able to like prevent one of your opponent's Pokemon from like hitting into your Trick Room center is like a really really big deal. Like that matters so much, and you'll really see that in Gen 7, 8, and 9, and that's one of the main reasons that like Hard Trick Room and DOU becomes like so much stronger because it's just easier to get it up. And then Lurantis is also an interesting Trick Room mon. We'll see this guy more in Gen 8, but uh, in Gen 7, it's like a very very like you know it's a real Pokemon. Superpower is really nice with Contrary, and then Leaf Blade is it's a great way to like beat Cart and Finny at the same time, and have a Trick Room Center that's not susceptible to Trick Room Sweeper that's not susceptible to Intimidate is really nice. And then there's others like more balanced stuff you could do with P2. Let me see if I can find one of the ones I used last year. Oh yeah, this is I think a team from the forums somewhere. It might have been built by QSNS, but this is a really nice kind of semi-room team with like Porygon 2 and like Araquanid is a Trick Room Sweeper. There's a lot of different Pokemon viable in Gen 7. Oh yeah, here's the one that I was looking for. So yeah, this is like kind of, like your standard, you have P2 plus like a whole bunch of like, you know, medium speed to your Pokemon. And it can honestly just like make progress by itself. Like here it's mostly setting Trick Room for like the Zygarde and like Finny. But like, it just can make progress with Ice Beam and T-Bolt. It's just a very bulky Pokemon. Can make a lot of progress in games by itself. Alright, so that's the main thing with Gen 7. Let's see. Moving on to Gen 8. What do I have for Gen 8? The builder. Oh yeah, so this is the gen where Lurantis becomes like very, very good. In part because you have Glide, and that can like because Rillaboom is like omnipresent. You don't even need to be running Rillaboom to have Glide on it because it's just really good. P2 is a little bit weaker in this gen, but because like Urshifu is like around, but there's also no Megas, which makes P2 a little bit stronger. So kind of some trade offs for P2, but this is still like probably the best Trick Room setter. Diancie is also around, and you'll see these like kind of like Chris Number style teams with like let's see, where go like this with Torkoal, P2, Diancie, very viable stuff. Um, so let's see, and then the other stuff you'll see that I have several replays of here is these like this is the gen where Expanding Force was added. So you'll see these in DD teams with like Trick Room Necrozma and Sakataka, and they'll just be able to like make a lot of progress in Trick Room if it ever gets up. I don't think this is a game where Trick Room actually gets used, but this is a really good example of like what your like run of the mill Trick Room team will look like. So Necrozma will run like Power, Meteor Beam, and then Expanding Force with Indeedee. And Indeedee, while it doesn't learn Trick Room in this gen, like it does in Gen 9, like it's still very nice for like, redirection plus, setting Trick Room. And it's just another one of these utility pieces that makes it so much easier to like get away with running Trick Room in the modern gens. Yeah, here's I think a better example of a replay. Very similar team. Indeedee, Necrozma, Stakataka. This is not like the only way you see Trick Room. Like it's like I said, like the DNC Torkoal stuff with P2 is also very common, and Lurantis is around as well. But this is definitely like this is the gen where like size spam becomes like a Trick Room staple because expanding force is like the toughest move ever invented. Toy Scarf Necrozma. Oh no. And yeah, Volcanion like this is kind of an interesting mod in this gen. It's kind of strong in general, but I think it's not like incredibly common, but it is pretty good with these teams. Having a way to like beat Landorus, which is really nice because Landorus just becomes a very real Pokemon in Gen 8, specifically the incarnate form. And also, Volcania is not that fast, like I said earlier, so it's pretty decent. But Stakataka, like in this gen, it just does a lot of damage. Shadow Ball just does so much damage because it's so slow, and then it also has Body Press, which I think is neat. Most of the time, like these teams will be like Rock move plus Steel move, but you can also click Body Press if you really want to, which I think is cool. By far the most common set though is Life Orb with Power Ball and like Rock Slide. No more Z move, unfortunately, but Life Orb is still like quite strong. It could also be like Safety Goggles or something. Amogus is definitely a real mon. Okay, so lastly we have an example of like one of these Lurantis teams. So this is actually one of these like very similar to. I mean, I think there's like a sample team that has like Lurantis. It's just like a really strong Pokemon when you get the conditions right. Like I said, like there's no Megas in this gen, so Lurantis becomes like a lot stronger relative to the power level of the format, which just makes it really good. And then obviously we have another Stakataka team. Let's see what the Stakataka does. It's a Trick Room. It can do anything else. Yeah, Gyro Ball, Life Orb, Rock Slide. Standard stuff. Kind of clean through this game pretty quickly. And so yeah, I mean Trick Room is pretty strong in this gen. But like I don't know. It's not like super crazy. Gen 9 is really when Trick Room I think becomes like its strongest for a lot of reasons that we'll get into in a second. But yeah, Stack Attack, big deal. This set is funny. This is not a good set, but I just had to highlight it. It's funny. Um, and yeah, P2, very good. You still gotta be wary of Urshifu, but a lot of the Urshifu nowadays run like Assault Vest, so they actually like they don't have a whole lot of attack in Vest, so they won't like remove the P2 in one hit. Not like that was ever that they always had to be Life Orb to get that kill to begin with, but it makes P2 a little bit better that the Urshifus are running bulky. I mean, it's harder for these Trick Room teams to remove that, but it makes it a little bit easier to get Trick Room up in the first place. Okay, let's see. Trick Room. What do I have for Trick Room? And yeah, Torkoal. This is the gen where Torkoal becomes a thing because it's the first gen where it has Drought and Charizard is not in the game, like the Mega Charizard, so it becomes like the Sun Pokemon. And Eruption does a lot of damage. It's not like the most incredible Pokemon, but can definitely like win games in the right positions. All right, so entering Gen 9, this is when like Pokemon becomes so strong because you have like Terra to like be able to get Trick Room up. And so some of the most like common Trick Room teams that you'll see are kind of like this. These are like the kind of the more standard. Like I actually built this team, like hard Trick Room teams. You have Torkoal. Ursaluna is like the biggest thing added in this gen because it just does so much damage, like all around. Um, And then DNC having Terra is like really nice for it. Makes DNC a much more dangerous Pokemon because it can just win games. Like any Diamond Storm boosts Terrain and then clicking Body Press into your whole team. But Ursulin is the main one, and this is the kind of the main prey you'll see for Trick Room in this gen. Like Ursulin is the strongest Trick Room Pokemon we've ever had. Like it's kind of nuts how strong this Pokemon is. Like the stats it has, like it's just ridiculous. Pretty quick game. And you can also see like a lot of teams that'll run like solo DNC. Like Cyber is definitely still a thing in this gen, but uh, like a lot of the Sinistra is like one of the main key pieces added for that because it can fit on so many teams. That's utility outside of Trick Room, but being able to set Trick Room is always nice, obviously. So I really don't like that Rage Powder. I feel like Trick Room had to be clicked on that turn. But yeah, these are the kind of these are the like the strongest dedicated Trick Room teams, and then Torkoal as well. It's pretty good. One of the other really common Trick Room teams is this Hugo Room team, which this is like the full room team. Like you'll see like most of the time in terms of like full room size spam. And yeah, it just has all the key pieces like Torkoal, strong expanding force Pokemon, and Hatterene and Hoopa, and then Ursaluna, and then Diancie with Terra, and like Indeedee getting Terra is like a not Indeedee getting Trick Room is like so stupid because it just gives these teams like so much more flexibility than they had before. And yeah, you'll see a lot of different Trick Room stuff. Here's another one, Bronzong, and which was like kind of a development last year. Talked about that in the last video, but it's very very strong with Ursaluna, so that is definitely a very real thing. Surrogate centers of this gen are definitely like Sinistra, Bronzong, Diancie overall. You don't really see much P2 in this gen. It's just kind of like it's just kind of meh in terms of like making progress and stuff. And like I don't think it benefits as much from Terra because its base typing was like already pretty good. It doesn't benefit as much from Terra, and it's really really bad into Gold. Gold is like the biggest mod in this gen that's added. That's like a nuisance to Trick Room. Landorus can be annoying as well, but Gold like has a great matchup into basically every Trick Room setter. So like a lot of using Trick Room comes down to having like pieces to like uh deal with it. So like that's like Torkoal, that's Ursaluna. Hoopa is really interesting as a Trick Room setter because it's the Trick Room setter with like a ridiculous high spin F stat and it's not weak to Gold. So it's pretty good at like dealing with it. Let's see. Sinistra, yeah, like stuff like this. Very common stuff. You'll see like your Tailwind setter with Foreign Mood and then your Trick Room setter with Sinistra. And it kind of leads to this like but this is definitely the most positive gen for something to a team to run like both Tailwind and Trick Room. You'll see a lot of that. Just so teams have a way to play into everything. And there's just such a wide variety of like both Tailwind setters and Trick Room setters. So you'll see stuff like this. I mean, Tailwind's a lot more limited, but Roaring Moon definitely doesn't like hate the fact that Sinistra's on the team. If that makes sense. Let's see what else. Yeah, you can kind of see how like these like size spam Sun teams have been around for a while. You can see one here with Deoxys and like Lilligant as the fast attackers. Well, that's mostly it. I mean, Chris is also still real in this gen, but it's not as good as before. Let's see, what has Trick Room in my builder? Yeah, Bronzong, Sinistra, Diancie. It's kind of the standard stuff. So yeah, I think that's mostly it. Yeah, thanks for watching. And comment down below if you have another thing you'd want me to talk about in a future video. And yeah, see you next time.